Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Monster Families. Today, we're going to be talking about a very odd monster family, one that actually appears in somewhere that you wouldn't expect before they appear where you do expect them, and that is the monster family known as the Fetishes. Fetishes are actually in Act 1. Some people are surprised by the fact that they are in Act 1, but they are actually in Act 1 before they are in other acts. They actually appear for the first time in the game as Ratman, which is weird. And they don't always appear in Catacombs. That's also the odd thing, is that you could potentially play for years sometimes and never really see them, especially if you're skipping through the zone or teleporting. And they often don't spawn as well. So there are many, many times where you will go through Catacombs, clear the entire thing, floors 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you will not see any Ratman at all. The Ratmen are relatively low level, at only level 10 in normal difficulty, 42 in Nightmare, and 72 in Hell. And as you can see, they have kind of, very mediocre stats because they are little low-level creatures. Their health is... where is that at? 3,749, which is definitely the lowest out of the entire lot. And they are in the same family as the Fetishes, the Flayers, the Soul Killers. And for some reason or not... I don't know why the Stygian doll is also in the same category here. The Stygian doll is definitely not what I would consider to be the same category, because they're the ones that explode, and there's the ones that, in general, aren't very nice to you. I do have some of the Ratmen right here. Let me go ahead and kill these non-Ratmen. So as you can see here, these are the Ratmen, and these are definitely Flayers. They come in a multitude of variety as well, so it's not just the Flayers, it's also the spitty ones and all the other types. In the old version of the game, they looked a little less demonic, I feel like. Although maybe not completely not demonic, but in the new version, they definitely look a lot more demonic than the other one. I used to think that they were just pygmies, like short, cannibalistic humans, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like they are more or less, demons. That's what they are. It says, attacking with enormous vicious knives or at range with deadly blow darts, the Fetishes are native inhabitants to the jungles that are surround Kurast and known cannibals. So they are actually cannibals, which is a thing. They are also demon type. They are small, intelligent beings in league with the forces of hell. Individually, Fetishes are weak and easy to kill. However, they are much more formidable when attacking in mass. When accompanied by a shaman, they are doubly dangerous, as the shaman possesses the ability to revive them. The other interesting thing about Fetishes is that they often come in a multitude of resistance types. And I don't really think they're all shown here. In fact, I would wager that some of them are probably missing, and I probably need to go to the Act 3 bestiary to pull up the full list. And let's go ahead and do that real quick and take a look. So we've also got the bone fetish category. So the undead Stygian dolls, the undead stone killers, and the undead Flayers. So the undead Stygian dolls are the ones that explode. Do we have the regular? We have the fetish shamans, which don't exist in Act 1. So you don't have to worry about the Ratmen ever being resurrected, because there's no fetish shamans to go along with the Ratmen, as far as I'm aware. I don't remember if you can have a elite Ratman, though. I actually can't remember. As you're running along, if you do happen to encounter a elite pack of Ratmen, some packs of monsters cannot have an elite version of Ratman, or like of the monster types, right? So like take the Shaman, the Flayer, the dark ones. Let's take the dark ones, right? So whenever you have an elite dark one, it's always a shaman, right? And maybe, no, because here we do right here, we have an elite Ratman. So it doesn't look like the shamans are capable of spawning at all then, since we have an elite version of the Ratman in Act 1. So there's your evidence to the contrary on that, Mr. Foulbang. I'm sure those names are hilarious. The Foulbangs. Now, the Ratmen, the Flayers, all of the various types that you could potentially have, do have various resistances. And let's go over this really quickly because this is something that's important. So as you can see here, some of them have higher lightning, cold resistance, like the Flayers are generally immune to cold. The Soul Killers are generally immune to lightning, as are the Fetishes. And then you have all of them seem to have a pretty healthy amount of poison resistance. We also have the fire resistance. The Ratmen and the Stygian dolls are immune to fire, right? So, like, this makes for a very interesting situation, and I'm going to see if I can demonstrate this situation for you. Is that a lot of the times they actually pose a significant threat for a completely different purpose, which is that they always seem to have counteracting resistance types between the shaman, for instance, and the actual fetishes. So let's go to the Flayer jungle. There's usually a multitude of them here. And what I want to demonstrate for you is the immunities that they have. So first we're going to find just the regular monsters, and you can see the Flayers are immune to cold. Of course, you can kill the Flayers if you have something that is not cold damage. However, you'll notice that the Shaman is immune to fire. And this is kind of across the board a case where it seems like the developers wanted to make sure that the Shaman always had a different immunity than the monsters so that the Shaman would be able to resurrect them. Like, say, for instance, you were a fire damage character and you were coming through here. Well, the Flayers themselves are not immune to fire. They are immune to cold. However, the Shaman is immune to fire. Which means that he will keep resurrecting the Flayers over and over and over again and potentially be quite a nuisance. Another interesting thing is that shamans are always two monsters. Not just one, they are always two. Which means that when you kill the shaman who is immune to fire, out will pop a regular Flayer, which is now immune to cold, because the Flayer was underneath the entire time. This also happens when you fight a elite shaman. So whenever you come across an elite shaman, well, the shaman is essentially two monsters. So anytime you have an elite shaman, it is technically two elites, which is actually really fun. Witch Doctor Endugu is one of these. If you go fight Witch Doctor Endugu, he is always an elite shaman, and he always is killable twice. The first time, of course, when he is the shaman, and the second time when he becomes the regular Flayer that was carrying him. But that regular Flayer is also elite and also still counts as Witch Doctor Endugu, which is rather interesting. So this is another small thing that they have the ability to do. Now, the immunities of these Flayers switch constantly. And this is something that we kind of want to talk about, and it does make them rather annoying to deal with. So as you can see, when you first find the Ratmen in Catacombs Level 1, they have fire immunity. Then eventually it changes to other immunities. Like, for instance, when you go into Spider Forest for the first time and you encounter the Flayers here, you'll notice that all of the Flayers here seem to have lightning. There actually is multiple resistances, though. So the spitty ones have lightning immunity. Whereas the stabby dagger ones, if I can find some stabby dagger ones, can sometimes have a different immunity than the ones that are shooting. And of course we have the big fat thorned hulks. Big old chonky boys. Why do I have no stamina? So here we have the lightning immunes, and the lightning immunes, of course, make things even more difficult. And the shamans in this area should have a completely different resistance as well than lightning, which also complicates matters. The Flayers themselves and the fetishes tend to be relatively easy to kill, depending on what kind of build you're running. In fact, they can actually be downright therapeutic for certain builds, and to say the least, if you go and you take a character like... where's my... Let's find just the right character so we can really see the therapeutic nature of the Flayers. This is Dusty, by the way. He's a good boy. He's being a goodest. So when you fight Flayers with an ability that actually is capable of hitting all of them at the same time, it's quite a sight to behold. And let's see if we can demonstrate this, shall we? Let's get a nice thick boy pack. Where's the way more than that? That's not enough. Oh, those are just regular winged nightmares. We need a thick boy pack. Where's the thick boys? Thick boy, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Somebody, way gonna thick boy them today. As you can see, eminently fun to play around with them when it comes to the ability to do massive amounts of damage to a large group. You get large amounts of holy bolts. The holy bolts hit multiple targets, pierce through them, and make it extremely easy for you to dish out massive amounts of damage, which is really nice. However, if you're a melee character and you are trying to kill them all one at a time, it's not quite as fun. Due to the nature of this particular type of monster to have a absolutely ridiculous number of creatures, you have to target each individual monster on their own, unless you happen to have some type of AoE attack. In which case, we have an elite shaman here. Good. Let me show off what I was talking about earlier with the shamans basically being able to multiply their eliteness. Trying not to kill him just yet. I want to get him isolated from the others. Alright, so we have the shaman. The shaman's name is Doomhead the Hammer, and we're going to kill him. And what you're going to see is that he's going to die, and he's going to spawn the smaller one, which is now also Doomhead the Hammer. You essentially, anytime you get one of these shamans, it is essentially two elites, which is actually pretty cool. They are kind of a pain in the butt to kill on some characters, though, especially depending on their immunities, because the immunities are constantly swapping and constantly switching, which means that, well, you never really know exactly what immunity you're going to have depending on the area you go to, which means that in Spider Forest they could be ridiculously easy to kill, and then when you get to Flayer Jungle they might have just the right immunity to counter you, and they're going to be a pain in the butt for that entire area. Then you get into, say, like one of the other areas where they seem to be in a large quantity, like Karasta, what is that, a Flayer Dungeon, and Flayer Dungeon has different immunities again. And then you get into, say, Durance of Hate, and Durance of Hate also has, again, different immunities, which happens constantly with this particular monster type. Now, overall, their HP is just really low, especially when you compare them to other monsters that have a much higher HP pool. So that's not even the HP, that's their defense. Their HP is right here. And looking at the highest HP on their list, which is 4,761, and comparing that to something like, say, a good option would be something else in Act 3. So let's use the Thorned Hulks as an example. The Thorned Hulks have a minimum of 12,631 HP. So taking that into account, you can see that the little baby Flayers just don't really compete when it comes to HP. And it's how they're designed. They're weak. They are easy to kill. They resurrect very easily. They have rotating immunities, which makes them a pain in the butt. And the poison that they dish out is kind of nasty, depending on if you get the spitty ones, which are a variation, of course, of the melee ones. And that is a whole nother thing. Sometimes in the same zone, you will find that the spitties have a different resistance than the melees, which can also further complicate things, making it rotate back and forth. As you can see here, fetishes are known for their hit and run tactics. Use cold attacks to freeze fetish to prevent them from running away. Hire an Iron Wolf Cold Mage to freeze fetishes and help you locate where they are hiding. Any kind of splash damage, such as Fireball or Dragon Tail, helps against the fetishes since they tend to bunch up and close together. I mean, basically any AoE damage whatsoever tends to help tremendously. However, the spitter ones tend to spread a lot, and it's really annoying, to be perfectly honest. There's really not much you can do with these guys. You can taunt them. You can potentially cause them to explode, which would be nice. Any type of like corpse explosion or AoE effects are going to be primarily what you're looking for with these guys. As revives, they're relatively weak. They're not really very good monsters, like in the grand scheme of things. Their damage is relatively low. They don't really have very high poison by comparison to some other monsters. So if you're looking for a very good poison monster, you're probably better off looking at the giant spiders, because there are some spiders that have literally like the longest and highest poison damage in the entire game. So if you're just looking for poison damage, well, those spiders are better. As fodder, I mean, just general fodder, they work very well. I would probably more often use them for skeletons than I would anything else. The spitters, the ones that spit blow darts at you, tend to be a little bit more deadly, just simply because they can gang up on a monster easier than the melees, which have to obviously occupy space around the monster, which makes them, yeah. As you can see, they do have a block chance. They have 11 to 24% block chance, depending on which type you're looking at. And very interesting little devils, little evil little monsters. I actually really enjoy fighting these when I am on my Fist of the Heavens Paladin, and I really hate fighting these when I'm on a melee character. Because on a melee character, you have to run around and you have to attack every single one at a time, and it can just be such a pain in the butt. Like literally just hunting them down and finding every single one. In fact, a lot of the times, you might even just be better off running past them for the most part. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So you see these guys have poison or lightning resistance, and the soul killers are poison resistance. So these are two of the same exact monsters in the same exact area, but these are the spitters and these are the melee, and you can see they have different resistances. This is a pretty common thing with Flayers. Their resistance types seem to be almost like Power Ranger-esque in a way, where they rotate constantly. And it is very easy for them to counter whatever damage type you have, because, well, if they're constantly rotating, there's going to be a time when eventually they're going to rotate the right way and counter you completely. There's really not much more to say about them. They are definitely a fodder type monster. They are related to the more evil monsters, which has to do with the Stygian dolls, the undead Stygian dolls, essentially. And of course, they also have to do with the shamans. Now, the shamans themselves do have the ability to resurrect all of them, and they also have their own immunity, depending on which one you're looking at. For instance, the Fetish Shaman, Flayer, and Soul Killer Shamans are all immune to fire. They also have pretty good resistances to poison, as you can see, 50% to all res. They have lightning, pretty good DR at 25%. Their block chance is pretty high. They tend to be really annoying, and they like to spam Inferno. High warning here. Even though the Inferno is probably one of the worst skills, like damage-wise, in the game, and even if you like max it out, it still sucks. Word of warning is that these guys will melt you. In early difficulties, especially in normal difficulty, getting touched by the Inferno that comes out of these Fetish Shamans can instantly one-shot you. It is a very odd thing that an Inferno, which is one of the weaker abilities in the game, can be so absolutely devastating to low-level characters. A little bit of fire resistance goes a long way, but overall, for some reason or another, just absolutely devastating at low levels. The Fetish Shamans also tend to have an aura, as you can see here, Fetish Aura, which increases the attack speed of the fetishes. So you get basically killing the Fetish Shaman should be your priority in pretty much all situations, for a couple reasons. Number one, the Fetish Shaman will resurrect the fetishes. Number 2, the Fetish Shaman can very easily kill you in lower difficulties with Inferno. Now, granted, once you're higher level, your HP is good, your fire resistances are good, you probably won't have anything to fear from it. But there are times in the game where that Inferno can melt the skin right off of your flesh, or bones, right off your bones. And then, of course, they are also giving an aura to all of the fetishes around them. So not only are they resurrecting them and acting as support, but they're also essentially making them attack faster, which gives you all the more reason to kill the fetishes first. In fact, it should pretty much be your main goal, is killing the fetishes first before anything else. If the fetishes are in that zone, you cannot have an elite version of the others. So this is something that's very interesting. Although you can have an elite Ratman, you cannot have an elite Fetish, Flayer, Soul Killer, or Stygian doll because there are always shamans that go along with them. I'm not entirely sure if all of these have shamans, but I know that if there is a shaman associated with that particular type of fetish, then there cannot be an elite version of that fetish. And when that happens, you always end up with an elite Fetish Shaman instead. Now, the interesting thing is, though, is that through the thing I demonstrated earlier, when you kill the Fetish Shaman, you will always then, therefore, also get an elite regular fetish, because the Fetish Shaman de-evolves basically into its lower half here, and the lower half becomes also elite in the same exact way, which means that the Fetish Shaman, the Flayer Shaman, and the Soul Killer Shamans are essentially the only ones that exist. So if we like compare the two lists, you can see there's no Ratman Shaman. And because there's no Ratman Shaman, that means that we have no Ratman Shaman that will ever exist. The Fetish, the Flayer, and the Soul Killer exist, and it looks like the Stygian doll one does not exist. So there is no Stygian doll Shaman, only these three here. There's probably some in the guest monsters. Let's go check the guest monsters real quick just to see what we have. Stygian Fury is the, yeah, so it's the succubus. We got all the beautiful guest monsters here. Fetishes. Soul Killer, Stygiers, and Flayer, so no Ratmen. Fetish Shaman. So as guest monsters, nothing special there, just the same exact ones represented again. These do sometimes have different resistances, though, so keep that in mind as you're looking at some of them. Some of the guest monsters may have different resistances entirely. Like, for instance, these all have fire immunity, and I'm not seeing the lightning immunity variant, the poison immunity variant. They seem to be all missing from the guest monsters. Fun monsters to kill, but for the most part, they're literally just foot soldiers. They're trash. You won't really have too much issues with these as long as you have some type of AoE attack. If you don't have an AoE attack, well, things can get tricky. In fact, some of my worst memories going through Spider Forest, Flayer Dungeon, Flayer Jungle, etc., have been on characters that have to hunt down and kill every single Flayer one by one, which is just painful. I think that's pretty much it. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos. Be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.